Good day everyone. Welcome to the continuation on the discussion of the research design. So this time we will focus on the different kinds of the quantitative research design that you may use in doing your research study. So we will discuss with the experimental research design as discussed in the previous presentation, that experimental research design is under the categories, or one of the categories for the quantitative research design, the general category. So you can call research design an experimental if and only if the researcher can control the situation. So you are giving the freedom for the researcher to control something in that research process. So you are going to establish a relationship between the cause and effect of a situation. So you will be dealing with variables for the experimental research design. So the experimental research design is subdivided into three: the pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and true experimental. So we will discuss the pre-experimental design. Pre-experimental design has the least validity, as mentioned in the previous presentation. So it is the simplest form of the experimental research design. So it can be conducted to a single group or even multiple groups. So there are three types of the pre-experimental design. It could be one-shot case study, one group pre-test, post-test design, or static group comparison. So one of the types of the pre-experimental design is the one-shot case study. From the name itself, you are going to study a single group at a single point in time after you have given a treatment that you believe that treatment can cause change to the other variable. So the carefully studied single instance then is compared to the general expectation of what the case would have looked like had the treatment not occurred and to other events casually observed. So you're going to compare that one. For the one-shot case study, there is no control or comparison group is employed. The other one is one group pre-test, post-test design. So for the one group pre-test, post-test design, we are also dealing with single case or single group, but this time it is observed at two times. It is observed twice or at two time points. So one before the treatment and then one after the treatment. So meaning to say, you are going to measure that first and then give treatment and then measure again. Unlike with the other one, that you are going to just simply give the treatment and then measure after the treatment. So changes in the outcome of interest are presumed to be the result of the intervention or treatment. So the same, there is no control or comparison group being employed for the one group pre-test, post-test design. And the third is the static group comparison. So a static group comparison, a group that has experienced some treatment is compared with one that has not. So there will be one group with treatment and the other group without treatment. So observed differences between the two groups are assumed to be the result of the treatment. Next is the quasi-experimental design. So quasi-experimental design aims to establish a cause-effect relationship between the dependent and independent variables. However, it does not rely on random assignment. So instead, subjects are assigned to groups based on non-random criteria. So it is useful in situations where true experiments cannot be used for ethical or practical reasons. So the quasi-experimental is in between of the pre-experimental and the true experimental, meaning to say it has an average validity. So there are two types of quasi-experimental design, and these are non-equivalent control group. So for the non-equivalent control group, the researcher chooses existing groups that appear similar but where only one of the groups experiences the treatment. So there will be two groups. One will have the treatment and the other one will not have the treatment. But these two groups will most likely of the same characteristics. So the groups are not random. They may differ in other ways. They are non-equivalent groups. Although you are looking for mostly similar or appear similar, but also there are variations or they differ in some other ways that makes it non-equivalent groups. So when using this kind of design, the researchers try to account for any confounding variables by controlling for them in their analysis or by choosing groups that are similar as possible. So this is the most common type of quasi-experimental design. The second one for the quasi-experimental is interrupted time series design. So in this case, from the name itself, you are going to employ multiple measures before and after the experimental intervention. So you are going to evaluate that intervention effect using longitudinal data. So it will take quite long to evaluate an intervention. Next, the true experimental design. So as I've mentioned in the previous presentation, that true experimental design has the highest validity. So true experimental design controls for both time-related and other group-related threats, and two features marked true experiments, two or more differently treated groups, and then the random assignment. So the features of true experimental is that you are dealing with two or more groups, differently treated groups, take note of this, and then there is random assignment. Unlike with the previous kinds like the quasi-experimental and the pre-experimental, there is no random assignment. So researchers can control over experimental treatment and the power to place subjects in groups. So it employs both treated and control groups to deal with time-related rival explanations. So this one taken from the internet. So the true experimental, it is the essential ingredient of true experiment is random assignment or of subjects to treatment group. So as discussed in the previous slide, so the researcher has to follow random assignment of subjects. And then random assignment is a powerful tool for controlling threats to internal validity, and there are three kinds of the true experimental. It could be the randomized post-test only control group design. So both groups receiving different treatments. So there will be two groups and they will be receiving different treatments and then they will be tested. Next is the randomized pre-test post-test control group. So in this case, pre-test is included, then there is a treatment, and then there will be post-test. The third is the randomized Solomon 4 group design. So this case, you will be dealing with 4 groups. Out of the 4 groups, 2 were pre-tested and 2 were not pre-tested. Then has an intervention, and then we'll have the post-test. So if we're gonna compare the true experimental to the quasi-experimental, in terms of assignment to treatment, true experimental there is random assignment, quasi does not. For the control over treatment, under the true experimental, the researcher usually designs the treatment and decides which subjects receive it. So the researcher has the power to put the subjects to treatment groups. Whereas for the quasi-experimental, the researcher does not have the control over the treatment. In terms of use of control groups, in the true experimental research design, it requires the use of control and treatment groups. So you will be dealing with the 2 groups. Whereas for the quasi, control groups are not required, although they are also commonly used. And then the last for the non-experimental design, this case we will be dealing with the non-experimental. So the earlier discussion were the different research design under the experimental, but in this case we'll have the non-experimental. So the non-experimental observes only the phenomena as they occur naturally and no external variables are introduced. So variables are not deliberately manipulated, unlike with the experimental, and the setting also is not controlled. So the researcher collects data without making changes or introducing treatments. The bottom line is there is no manipulation, and obviously there is no treatment. So, as mentioned in the previous presentation, that the non-experimental may be also called as descriptive research design because it is the only one under the non-experimental design. However, there will be several methods under the descriptive research design. So the purpose of the descriptive research design is to observe, describe, and document aspects of situation as it naturally occurs, and sometimes to serve as a starting point for hypothesis generation or theory development. So there are different types of descriptive design. It could be survey. So survey, I guess, is not new to all of us. So survey, you're just simply gathering information from groups of people by selecting and studying samples chosen from a population. So if there are many, if there is a lot, or the number of the population is quite big, so therefore you're just simply gathering or study only the sample from the population. Also, it is useful when the objective of the study is to see the general picture of what the population under investigation. So that is survey. Next, correlational. It is conducted by researcher whose aim would be to find out the direction, associations, or relationship between different variables or groups of respondents under study. So, you will be dealing with variables for the correlational. And it has three types. Bivariate, from the name bi, you're dealing with two variables. And for example, children of wealthier, that's variable 1. Better educated, that's variable 2. Parents earn higher salaries as adults. So you're gonna correlate or show the association of the children from a wealthier or better education can earn a higher salary when they grow old, or when they reach adulthood, or when they reach a time in their life that they could earn on their own. So that's bivariate. Next, prediction studies. It uses correlation coefficient to show how one variable, which is the predictor variable, predicts another variable, the criterion variable. For example, which high school applicant should be admitted to college? So this is a prediction study. So you're going to use the correlation coefficient. Next, multiple regression prediction analysis. In this case, multiple, you're dealing with many variables or 3 or more. So all variables in the study can contribute to the overall prediction in an equation that adds together the predictive power of each identified variable. So for example, high school general point average is not the sole predictor of college GPA. What might be other good predictors? So you're looking for other predictors of the GPA in this example. Next, we have the ex post facto or causal comparative. So ex post facto, this kind of research derives conclusion from observations and manifestations that already occurred in the past and now compared to some dependent variables. It discusses why and how a phenomenon occur. For example, a researcher is interested in how weight influences stress coping level of adults. Here, the subjects would be separated into different groups according to their weight, the underweight, normal, and overweight, and their stress levels measured. So this is an example of ex post facto because there is a pre-existing characteristic which refers to the different weights, and it was used to check the stress level of the respondents or the adults. So how do the weights influence the stress coping level? So you are going to correlate the pre-existing to the variable in the present. So that is ex post facto or causal comparative. Next, comparative. It compares and contrasts two or more samples of study subjects on one or more variables. Often, at a single point in time. So it is used to compare two distinct groups on the basis of selected attributes. So you will be dealing with two groups for this case. Normative, it describes the norm level of characteristics for the given behavior. So the main idea of normative research is to try and improve something that is already in place. Next, evaluative. So evaluative is just simply evaluating, for example, a given program, if that is working or that is good. So in other words, you are going to have evaluation judgments. So for example, a test of children in school is used to assess the effectiveness of teaching or the deployment of the curriculum. So in this case, you evaluate how good is the curriculum using the test scores of the children. So that's it for this session. See you next time. Thank you and God bless everyone.
Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to get the new video updates.